Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As we wait for a couple more minutes for more people to join, I would like to encourage everyone to maybe drop a little message in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. My name is Eleonora, and I'm currently calling from Lithuania, Vilnius. We also have colleagues calling from Sweden and Slovakia. So it seems like it will be quite an international event. I see we have people from Greece, Croatia, Italy, Romania, Luxembourg, Czechia, Belgium. Hello, everyone. Australia, one of our experts. All right, thank you for all the greetings from around the world. I will just share the presentation. So hello, everyone. Today, we would like to share with you the results of a one-year-long study on school learning environments for sustainability in the European Union. So the study was funded by the European Commission and conducted by PPMI, which is the Public Policy and Management Institute, which is part of Verian Group. So before we actually go into the presentations and the event itself, I would just like to go over a few housekeeping rules. So just a reminder that the event is recorded and will be made publicly available after this event. We will share the recording and all the key materials with all the registered participants afterwards. We have the cameras of the audience turned off to ensure that the event goes smoothly, as we see that there's quite a few people joining. And for the question and answer sessions, we encourage you to leave your questions in the Q&A section, which you can find at the top. If you just click on the Q&A, feel free to leave any questions there, and we will read them out during the Q&A session. But also, we encourage you to actually raise your hand, and if you do, we will then unmute you and turn on your camera, and you can ask your question in person. If you're experiencing any technical issues, try refreshing your browser or rejoining the session, or leave a comment in the chat. So just a quick overview of the agenda. We will have 3 main key presentations, and after each of these presentations, we have a Q&A session that I mentioned before. And overall, the whole event should take about an hour and a half. Before we go into everything, we would just like to share with you a link to a Padlet, which will have an option to leave your own contacts and share with others what you do. If you're interested in connecting with like-minded people, or maybe you have some suggestions, maybe want to share an event that is coming up or anything of that sort. So feel free to go there. And my colleague will also leave a link in the chat through which you can access the Padlet. Today we will have 3 speakers for the presentations. So me, myself, Eleonora Lekavičiūtė. I'm a senior researcher at PPMI, and my colleagues Iselin Mulvik and Bernadeta Baroková. We all 3 were the core research team of the study, and but also I would like to give a shout out to our other colleagues who truly supported us and helped with a lot of the research. So that would be Núria, Brenda, and Stephanie. So thank you as well. And now to open the event, I would like to invite Ulrike Pisiotis, who is the policy officer at the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, and who works on topics of sustainability education. So Ulrike is the person who is behind commissioning this whole study, and she has also been our great supporter, giving us wonderful feedback, very insightful comments to our research, and just in general, great guidance and support throughout this whole study. So Ulrike, the floor to you.
Thank you, Eleonora, and thank you very much for your very nice words. And really a very warm welcome to everybody in this dissemination event here from a very sunny Brussels today. I have to say I'm very impressed that I see so many having joined this event, which means there is really a huge interest in that topic. And you will hear about all the great findings in a moment, but I also wanted to share a little bit with you just the background why we at the Commission were interested in that topic and commissioned the study in the first place. So Eleonora just said it, I work on sustainability education in the Commission at the Director General of Education and Culture. And part of my work is that I coordinate a working group on learning for sustainability. Now, what is a working group? It's a group mainly of education of representatives from education ministries from the EU member states, but also from international organizations, from social partners. And within that group, we regularly exchange on this topic of learning for sustainability, how to better include it in policies, in curricula, how to support teachers better, and a lot more. And within that group, we also at some point looked at learning environments. We had a very, very interesting meeting on that in Spain, in fact. We visited there some really inspiring places and heard about many more during the meeting. And one or some of the things that became apparent during that meeting, that really the physical environment is key for learning. And in the research, it has even sometimes been dubbed as the second teacher because it can impact learners' behaviors and practices. And I think especially for sustainability and climate change education, it's crucial that learners' environment reflect actually what they learn, the content that they learn, and that can really inspire and empower them to address climate change and become stewards of change. And at the same time, of course, we see across Europe, there is generally a pressing need to adapt school buildings. Many of them are quite old, run down, to also renovate grounds and infrastructure for the green transition. And what we also see more and more in member states is that they experience extreme weather conditions due to climate change, and that of course also affects school buildings, and that in that way it affects education and educational outcomes. So many points come together, and these points have been taken up in this study because at the meeting it became clear that we had a 2-day meeting, but we couldn't look into all these different angles, of course, in a lot of depth. So we wanted to have something that is both grounded in research, but also can give very practical guidance. And now I'm very happy to say that we are at the end of this journey, and I'm really happy that the study team, Iselin, Eleonora, and Bernadeta, are able to present the fruit of their work of approximately a bit over a year, I think, which is really impressive. And I also hope and think also actually very useful for anyone on that topic, working on that topic in education and perhaps even beyond. So Eleonora already said it, we have a study report which combines literature findings and research on the ground. But we also have very practical and inspiring outputs, such as a toolkit and a collection of good practices, which can be used by schools and other practitioners. You will hear about that right now, because without further ado, let me hand over to Iselin, to Eleonora and Bernadeta to present those different initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ulrike. Actually, before we step into the presentations, I would also like to thank our core external experts, so true experts in the field who have also been very, very useful to our study and always provided wonderful insights and gave us guidance as well. So that would be Alistair Blythe, Arjun Walls, and Parissa Panahi. So Parissa is actually calling in from all the way in Australia, where she is an associate professor at Curtin University. So I would just like to ask her to maybe give a few words and just to speak on the experience of working on the study. We'll just have to unmute you, Parissa. Just a second. I see we're having some technical difficulties. Oh, here we go.
No, I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Great work, team. It was, the report was really insightful and full of substance, really. I reviewed that at different stages, and it's a comprehensive overview, very strong conceptual framework, and clear links to real-world practices. So truly impressive. Well done for that. What I really appreciate is how the report connects the dots between sustainable infrastructure, student well-beings, and learning outcomes. Which is kind of a connection that is often talked about, but not always explored in depth. And I think this project has addressed that quite well. And it not only maps out policy and practice across EU, but also brings it to life through meaningful case studies and practical toolkits that can actually make a difference. As Ulrike mentioned, I think that practical toolkit is a significant, basically, contribution, which I encourage everyone to look at. So what stands out for me is the view of learning environments as lived experiences, where you just didn't look at the sustainability as a concept, but something that students and school communities feel and engage with on an everyday basis. So yes, I feel really privileged to be involved in the project, and I would like to thank you again for such fantastic piece of work. And I really hope projects like this will help drive a meaningful change for our next generation. And after reading the report, I actually was inspired. I wrote just a few sentences that I would like to read for you. So sustainability isn't just about buildings or policies. It's also about shaping values and empowering young people to care for each other and the planet. And schools are in a perfect position to lead that change, not just by modeling good practice, but by weaving sustainability into how learning actually happens. By rethinking learning environments through the lens of health, well-being, inclusion, and climate, we're not just preparing students for the future, we're inviting them to be part of shaping it. So thanks again for inviting me and involving me in this fantastic journey. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope everyone enjoys today's meeting, and basically, look forward to all the conversations and questions and answers. Thank you again.
Thank you, Parissa. The pleasure was ours to work with you, and thank you for the very inspiring and beautiful words as well. I would also like to give a shout out to our case study authors and national experts. Some of you I see have joined today. I see Jan from Czechia and Rita from Latvia, and perhaps as well Wim Lambrechts, Alessia Masso, and others who've really helped us with the study. To actually go into all the key findings of our study, I would like to invite Iselin to start her presentation.
Thank you so much, Eleonora. So yes, I will try to go through the most important, but as already mentioned by Clarissa and Ulrike, there's quite a lot of material here. And I just wanted to clarify that we are still, we're in the process of finalizing and publishing the deliverables. So they will be out in the course of May, towards the end probably. And once the meeting is done, we will, once they are published, we will let all of you participants know and get access to the deliverable. And this beautiful video that you saw will also be up on YouTube and also have links to the different deliverables. So this will also be a way to access the materials. So we'll share that with you later. I just wanted to quickly go through a little bit about what was the goal of the study and what we actually did. So we try to focus on a few different elements, but the main purpose was to identify good practice and potential policy recommendations and guidance for schools. So yeah, we have this more practical guidance, the toolkit that you'll hear about later, but also good practice. And we try to also map what's actually happening in the EU. And curious to hear how that's resonating with you. We had a literature review. We had national reports looking at what's happening in the member state with regards to practice, but also policy and strategies. We had a few workshops. We had case studies, and we also have all these deliverables that are mentioned here on the right. We were curious in how do member states in the EU foster learning environments that are supportive of sustainability and also learning, and what are the most significant trends and developments, and how can such learning environments be supported, and how can schools be supported, and how can schools also support their learners and their teaching community. So one critical thing to note is just that we have a definition of learning spaces for sustainability in our research. It may not be the same for research, so let me just quickly clarify that. So we see the space itself as needing to be sustainable, that it needs to be environmentally friendly, for instance, but we also wanted to look at spaces that also contribute to quality learning and well-being, and that actually contributes to teaching and learning about sustainability and sustainability competences. So in the EU, we have a brilliant framework for this already called the Green Comp, the European reference framework for sustainability competences. So the way that we have defined the learning spaces, that they also contribute to nurturing these competences. And sustainable learning spaces are therefore not only durable, energy efficient, and environmentally friendly, but they also create opportunities for addressing sustainability challenges and envisioning sustainability futures. And let me just show you also how we define that in our framework that Clarissa also mentioned. So we have kind of an onion model here. Just wanted to highlight that there are different dimensions of sustainable learning environments. So we have, of course, each country has different system level enablers or barriers that creates the situation in which a school operates, which of course is the situation that a school operates in, but also the whole school approach to sustainability is critical, together with bioclimatic and environmentally friendly interventions, which is the environmental part. And then also high quality learning interventions, which are always needed in schools when it comes to, for instance, sound isolation, technical innovations and such. And all of these combined is what create the student well-being and sustainability competences that we're looking for. And just to highlight, that also includes teaching and learning, which is embedded in this whole school approach we'll get to a little bit later. So in our study, we looked at, from the national mapping, just if this concept is being resonated with in the member states. We found that some national education strategies do not mention physical learning spaces at all. So they focus not so much on the physical space. But there are 11 EU member states, as we could see from the mapping, that explicitly define the concept of sustainable learning space, or a concept that is closely related. We also have member states that directly support learning for sustainability or education for sustainable development, and mention spaces, but they don't necessarily define exactly how should that space look like. Just to give you some brief examples, from the Spanish education law, it's written that given that the educational system cannot ignore the challenges posed by climate change, they must become a place of custody and care for our environment, and promote a culture of environmental sustainability, social cooperation, development of sustainable lifestyle programs, and promotion of recycling and contact with green spaces. So this is an example of a more detailed description. And also in Denmark's action plan for ESD, or for Education for Sustainable Development, it's written that green environments and teaching must go hand in hand with a sustainable physical environment in school. So just to recap a little bit, what are actually the benefits? Because this was also something we looked at in the report. Just trying to gather from the literature what are the positive impact of sustainable learning environments. We see improvements to the environmental performance of buildings themselves, but also calmness, creativity, and well-being, improvements in school, improving of relationships between students and between teachers and everyone in the community. And also in some schools, and this is also from our study actually, from our case studies, we see in some cases that there is improved student outcomes overall. So it's not always easy to claim direct causality here, but it does seem to have an impact also on learning outcomes. So I'll also get back to that. But so in high quality indoor environments, like with good air quality, they improve intention and well-being. They stimulate physical activities. So for example, gardens outside with a lot of greenery, or green roofs that can be accessed. They provide opportunities for physical activity. They also have stress reduction effects and provide spaces for curiosity and creativity. They can themselves help schools to address climate change issues and regulate temperatures that is necessary. And of course, engagement in pro-environmental behaviors could also increase happiness, autonomy, and belonging, and feeling of belonging to school for learners. Overall, we know that happy students equal better learning outcomes, and higher well-being is really crucial in order to improve the learning quality in school and learning outcomes. And it definitely predicts higher academic performance. So overall, this is just a very crucial foundation. But also from the specific spaces that we see that often the way they are aiming to be sustainable, they also have other impacts on inclusion. So for instance, modular furniture that can be used in multiple ways, that are flexible, they can be moved around, open spaces. They often are agile spaces that provide opportunities for different teaching methods and different student needs. They're multifunctional and activity permissible, and this can foster movement, it can foster creativity, but it can also foster inclusion for different types of students, and maximizing, of course, the space available. And technology as well, we'll get back to and see some good examples of that later. But overall, I think one of the key highlights to mention is just that these spaces, even if it's like a green space, a green roof, multifunctional furniture and reusable furniture in an interesting space, they need to be intentionally combined with teaching and learning practices. And if they are just passively there, of course, they have some purpose on their own, but they're particularly impactful if combined with teaching and innovative teaching and learning practices. And here we also bring in this holistic approach, which is absolutely crucial. So whole school approaches that link spatial, social, and pedagogical activities at the system level. So this need to actually bring this thinking around sustainable spaces into the whole operations of the school, and the school leadership, giving the direction and creating a culture. So not just individual isolated parts of the school, but that the sustainable learning spaces expanding over time, being looked after, being improved, and that there is a culture behind it, this itself, where the school is in a way a living laboratory, can also promote impact on learning, on ecological literacy, problem solving, and real life applications of sustainability. And we also highlight a lot in our report the importance of partnership with universities, NGOs, and local actors, as well as student involvement in design and maintaining the school space, as this has also particularly good impact on their learning. It also, as I mentioned already, improves their belonging to the school, their motivation to use the space, and also it can be integrated in actually their learning. So we have interesting examples that you will see later of how the refurbishment of the school itself becomes a part of a lesson, how like science classes can be used to calculate and design different spaces of the school, and how this can be very integrated into the learning that the school is already doing. So this itself, student involvement, but also participation and agency is critical as well for learning. And then, of course, just the basics that we probably most of us know by now, but so retrofitting schools and changing the environments, if done, changing the physical layout and isolation and windows and like small things, but even light bulbs can really reduce energy consumption, depending on how it's done, but it can really reduce it well. Also, green technologies have a very good effect on cooling and heating costs and emissions. So this means freeing up costs that a school can use for other initiatives that improves learning and teaching. And we also already know that there are issues with climate adaptation, water, and biodiversity management in schools. So these initiatives can be very helpful, for instance, using rainwater harvesting systems or native planting of biodiversity around the school. Yes, and this also goes back to the community and collaborative sharing. Like, it could be great here to use locally sourced materials to reduce the school's footprint and try to really embed these circular principles in action. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities here for strong impact on the environment itself. As well as I mentioned earlier, and this is probably the highlight, that we really need to see this also as an educational tool, because what we learned from our study is that although there are a lot of great initiatives, very often they do appear a bit more passive in the schools, so they're not used actively as an educational tool, while they are actually fantastic opportunities for learning and teaching. Some challenges and tensions to why this is the case, why it's a bit challenging for schools to actually move towards this more transformative use of the space and design of the space with students, is that there is often a lot of short-term comfort goals instead of long-term sustainability thinking. So it's kind of looking for like energy-intensive systems that give like immediate comfort instead of thinking more long-term. There's also an issue of lack of in-house expertise. So there's a need for partnerships to help to design and audit and maintain. And we often forget that even green spaces require a lot of work for maintaining them after they're introduced. But also this means that probably schools need higher upfront investment. So the cost at the beginning is maybe higher than towards afterwards, although it also needs to continue to maintain the spaces. Long-term maintenance of green features is not always guaranteed or budgeted for in project funding, as well as this expertise not being long-term. And sometimes at the school level, we also see that the school, this effort to introduce these spaces is maybe driven by one passionate staff member. And if this person then leaves the school, then this effort kind of dies and it doesn't continue. So it's also, as I said, crucial to create this culture and distributed leadership where more people share this burden and also share this joy. And finally, it's crucial to also ensure that interventions are context sensitive, inclusive, and equitable to ensure that students participate. And this may also be a challenging task for school communities to engage with in an inclusive way. So let me just quickly get to the policy recommendations. So we do have in our report, I will not go through all of them here, but as I mentioned, these were some of the challenges we found, and we tried to analyze them and also come up with some areas where we think that there is need for more work. It should be said that a lot of work is already happening, especially at the EU level, but also on in the different member states. We see a lot of work when it comes to energy efficiency and putting emphasis on decarbonizing decarbonizing public buildings and schools. But there's kind of like a lack on this integrated approach where we also think about it from a learning perspective. So a few of the supportive policy actions that we are focusing on is more explicit vision and policy goals for learning environments, for sustainability within national and regional education policies, to have a more explicit vision here, because sometimes lost within other priorities and also not explicitly mentioned. And it's really crucial for schools to have some documents to refer to when they're justifying to municipalities or other partners why they want to make some changes. Multi-level and interdisciplinary task forces to coordinate policies, funding, guidelines, and also networking for peer learning is super helpful to have different specialists or people responsible within different ministries or within different departments to work together with architects, work together with schools and unions, etc. On the requirements and regulations, of course, there are still things that can be done. And although there is a lot of improvements here in many member states, we also would like to see a bit more focus on well-being and learning goals, not just the environmental goals, as otherwise they become very separated. And also that public funding could also help to actually incentivize this with coming to requirements for like minimum energy efficiency goals, sustainability standards. And this is actually happening in a few member states already, but this could also include effort on well-being and learning. And also the whole cycle, a longer term cycle compared to what we see today, where it's often more short term. And I think that was what I had for now. I tried to go a bit through it so we also catch up on the agenda, but I'm very curious to hear if this resonates with you and if you have any questions to the presentations that we can explore now. And then, of course, otherwise, we look very much forward to sharing all the findings with you once it's published.
Thank you, Iselin, for your presentation. So I can see that we have some questions in the Q&A chat. So maybe I would start with the first one and also answer that. The question was whether we can see which member states are defining the sustainability space. So in the final report, we have a section with examples of different countries, including different terms used, because in our analysis, we analyzed different types of strategies and documents. We also looked at education strategies, building strategies, some references to the European policies or other related concepts. So we can talk, for example, some countries do explicitly mention this term. Other countries use other concepts such as modernization of school buildings, or they refer to other infrastructure or decarbonization and many other terms, but we can see defining the sustainability space in the Ireland or Austria or Luxembourg or Czech Republic. So there are some countries who define this either more explicitly or less. And then other question, maybe Iselin, you can answer that, whether we included also vocational education and training in our analysis.
Yes, thank you so much, Bernadeta. Yeah, so we do have, we should have some example of this, of good practice initiatives at vocational education and training level in our compendium of good practice for sure. I'm not sure we had a specific focus on it throughout the report, but for sure there should be examples. I don't think we had examples from case studies, but there should definitely be some good practice examples highlighted.
Yes, and exactly.
And we do know that vocational education training institutions are very great institutions for actually trying to come up with new ways of building sustainably within the school and bringing in the students to actually do the hands-on work, for instance, with furnitures and gardening and etc. Because there's students already maybe have some skills that can be used. So it's actually a very great opportunity to work on these issues in VAT institutions.
Thank you. I can see one more comment in the main chat. Maybe I can read that out loud. In fact, there are so many factories that pollute the environment that a carbon tax can be used to fund these schools. So thank you for the suggestion. That would be, yes, definitely a way how to get more funding. Maybe if someone wants to raise a hand and ask a question, I think we have a time for 1 or 2 more comments. And if not, then maybe we can move to the next presentation.
Bernadeta, there's another comment in the Q&A that was just posted.
Thank you. So yes, there is a question. Do you have any reflections that you can share how to achieve that school as a sustainable institution does not depend on the initiative on one person only, but is systematically pursued by any school leadership?
Yeah, we do have such examples. So one of our case study school, which is a Swedish school, there they had indeed this problem in the past that there were a few, like one very motivated teacher, and then that teacher quit and the initiatives kind of faded out. But with the new principal coming in, this principal decided to actually make it more like a distributed leadership. So she's working with the technician of the school, with the administrator, with the head science teacher, and the 4 of them together have meetings, and they together work on this, and then they bring in the kids that are actually in the science program to also help and be a part of the process. So I think this is like just one example that depends on the type of teachers and staff in the school, but dividing between administrators, technicians, and maybe head teacher of a specific program can be one very good way to do it. And we already saw a few examples of this in our case studies of this distributed leadership, and that definitely made a change in that school.
Thank you. There is one more comment from Bulgaria, from Elisaveta. We face the problem that schoolyards are often built over to make space for large sports halls. How can this be reconciled with sustainability, child-friendly school development, and the idea of schools as holistic living environments?
Yeah, it's a challenging question, because of course you need those spaces as well. But there are definitely ways of I would say from our examples that we see ways to at least design these new spaces that can be more environmentally friendly and also more forward thinking. So working together with companies to use different materials that are recycled or secondhand from within the community, or to use spaces that are modular and thinking about a future purpose or additional purpose, because we also know that some of these ventures in the future may need to be used for something else. So already having this adaptability and flexibility mindset, which comes from green architecture principles, already embedded in the building of such a new space, would already be very, very helpful. And maybe having some architects with that mindset involved in the process is already a very, very good step.
And the last question, and then we'll need to, unfortunately or fortunately, move to other presentation. Whether did we compare the educational levels on how they use these learning environments for sustainability, and what interventions are taking place? Whether you could tell a difference between primary and secondary educational level. Just to remind that this was the primary and secondary schools' focus of the study.
It's a good question. I think maybe you or Eleonora would see a bit, could also touch on that in your presentations, as at the moment I didn't really see the very clear difference. I would say we have good practices both of primary and secondary schools. But of course, it may be an issue, as the previous comment, that secondary schools may have different types of requirements and want more maybe technology and more different types of buildings for more advanced learning and teaching. So then that requires a bit of a different thinking compared to what we see with primary schools, where the focus is a bit more on these gardens and outdoor gardens. So maybe the focus is a little bit different, but we don't need to say that one part cannot be sustainable or cannot be sustainably built. As we know, there are many ways to integrate green into buildings, to roofs, to ceilings, to the way that you manage the space and the way it is built and the furniture, and the recycling and circular economy principles, and not just the green space itself.
Thank you, Iselin. I think I'll give the floor to Eleonora to continue with presentations. I can see that there are more questions coming up, but I hope that we get a chance to answer them later or in the chat. So Eleonora, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bernadeta. All right, so with this presentation, we would like to just go over some of the good practice that we found in this year of research. And of course, we found hundreds of very inspiring examples. So just to give you a little taste of them, and the good practice that we'll talk about is basically drawn from the 3 deliverables, the compendium of good practice, collection of case studies, and the final report. So I will just give a glimpse into each of these and what examples they hold. So just starting with the compendium of good practices, this compendium collects 25 institutional, so school level, and policy examples, mostly from the EU, but also from around the world. And it is divided into 3 chapters. So one on school buildings, grounds, and classrooms, the other one on green spaces, and the third one on policy initiatives. So this compendium is really directed at supporting policymakers, schools, local stakeholders, parents, the community, educators. So anyone can find interesting things for themselves there. All the practices are presented in short, easily digestible format. And again, just reminding that they come from primary and secondary education. To collect this compendium, we relied on literature review, desk research, consulting experts in education, architecture, landscape architecture, engineering, learning for sustainability and the environment, around 50 experts in total. And we also opened an open call for proposals. So we had, if I'm not mistaken, over 70 submissions from everywhere. And then we narrowed down to the 25 examples. So this compendium also has this quite useful categorization into themes. There are 7 of them. So engagement of students, school community, sustainable architecture, climate resilience and nature-based solutions, energy efficiency, circular economy, outdoor learning, and whole school approach. So they're not exclusive categories. For many of the compendium examples, they overlap. And what you can also find in the compendium is also a definition of what we consider to be a good practice. So it is discussed in the compendium, but just to quickly kind of mention some elements is that we considered good practice those practices that include elements of nature-based solutions, examples that foster sustainability competences, that also involve playfulness and safety, that also rely on participatory design. So to give a few examples, we have the disconnection room in Orvieto in Italy. So this is a room that is surrounded by a green space. And why it's called the disconnection room is because whether you're a student or a teacher, when you enter this room, you have to leave your phone behind. So this space is used for co-working, working on creative projects, and also just relaxing and just disconnecting from the rest of the world. We also have an example coming from Luxembourg, which is a school that was newly built, and it uses local and ecological materials to be sustainable. So, for example, locally sourced wood and cork, and even recycled textiles for insulation, including old jeans to insulate the building, eco-friendly paints, antibacterial tiles. It is also very visually inclusive and inclusive to visually impaired students and those with special needs. So this whole school was built with the aim to produce more energy than it consumes. We also have examples of policy initiatives. So the MOS initiative from Flanders in Belgium, this initiative supports schools in integrating sustainability into their curricula and operations, and it really provides this guidance to schools and technical support, how to integrate environmental education, energy saving, waste management, greening initiatives into the school environment, and also delivering sustainability competences. So these are a few examples from the compendium, but we also have the final report, which focuses more on examples of policy. So as Iselin already mentioned, to actually discuss those policy recommendations in the report, we worked with 27 national experts and researchers who analyzed their strategic documents in their country, status quo, and just what policy is happening at the moment on the ground. So from this research, we ended up developing these 8 broader categories of policy, and each category in the report has quite a few very interesting examples. So funding opportunities, these examples usually touch on national level funding that promotes retrofitting, energy efficiency, or might fund specific schools to install solar panels, like in Greece or Cyprus. There's also funding opportunities for smaller scale infrastructure, for example, bicycle facilities or developing school gardens and so on. There's a whole other action area of sustainable building standards and regulations. So although most, I want to say all of member states have regulations for such basic things as how much light school children should have in their classrooms or how much space per student there should be, there's also some more kind of stronger examples of these regulations in place. For example, in Croatia and Estonia, requiring that all newly built school buildings are built on near zero energy principles. Then we have a category for, we have a category on school gardens and green spaces. So how national governments support the development of those, whether it would be through guidance or awards or funding. We have, actually, we did not find too many examples of how educator training is including learning spaces for sustainability. It still seems a bit rare to find initial teacher education that includes this explanation on how to use learning spaces in the teaching, but there are already some great examples there as well. Then we have a whole category of networks, certifications, and awards. And probably a lot of you who are here today are aware of the Eco Schools Network or even work with it. But in this category, we also looked at what national governments are doing to actually award and celebrate the schools that are already sustainable. Guidelines for schools is probably the broadest category. It had many interesting examples of governments providing this guidance to schools. Then outdoor learning, other infrastructure for learning for sustainability. This is probably a bit outside of the scope of the school itself, but it was interesting to see how governments can support schools that don't necessarily have green spaces on their grounds. So, for example, promoting studying in the city environment, in museums, and so on. And finally, training, guidance, networks, and peer learning for architects and builders. So these are all the types of examples that you can find in the final report. And just to give you a glimpse, there's two examples, one of building regulations that comes from Denmark, and in Danish schools are required to contribute to reducing energy consumption by at least 10% by 2030. So, and they're required to do this by reporting their energy consumption, promoting energy efficient behavior, implementing energy saving measures such as insulation, retrofitting, and also sometimes including renewable energy. An example of funding opportunities comes from Bulgaria. So this in Bulgaria, there is the National Trust Eco Fund, which invests in energy efficiency in public facilities. And through this fund, over 100 school buildings have also been retrofitted. So such examples and more, a really wide range of interesting policy initiatives you can find in the final report. And then finally, going to the case studies. So the case studies is a bit of a different format for good practice examples. They offer a really deep dive into 4 schools across Europe and 4 local and national policy initiatives. So this is the map of where these case studies come from. The empty circles indicate the school initiatives and the full circles show the policy initiative. So we really try to capture the very different ways in which sustainable learning environments can be promoted. So, for example, the Swedish school really gives examples on how to start with low initial costs, how to recycle old materials, and how to use spaces very creatively. The Slovakia school is very focused on student participation. The Paris Policy Initiative, Course Oasis, that is a program that transforms school backyards into natural havens and really includes active student participation. Ireland and the Flemish government offer more like complex policy plans and strategies. So the range is very wide. And just to give a little overview of two of the case studies, the GRG7 Kandelgasse School in Vienna, Austria. This school has almost 600 students and 85 teachers, and it's a school that is known for inclusive education and developing very strong partnerships. So one of these partnerships is with the Vienna Technical University, which has been the partner to help the school to integrate a lot of greenery into their school building. So just some photos and just to see what the school has done. On the roof of the school, there is a green roof that also has solar panels with vertical green facades, and it uses this vegetation to shade and to cool the solar system to promote efficiency. On the roof, you can also find an insect hotel that the students were engaged in building as well. So maybe just to mention that the case studies also discuss on maybe what could be improved or also some of the drawbacks. It should be mentioned that the roof cannot be accessed by students. So maybe the drawback here is that although the kids build the insect hotel, they can't actually go and look at it, or they can't actually work on the green roof because there's issues of safety and lack of railing. So although these attributes exist, they're not fully used for learning. Similarly, there's also an outside green wall that reduces energy requirements. There's an indoor green walls in 2 classrooms that the students were also engaged in making. And also in the school, they've built a garden and a pond and an indoor green corridor. So of signs of impact, there's the very measurable sign of impact is that it has these green approaches had lowered the microclimate temperature by up to 2 Celsius degrees. The indoor air quality has been improved. There's energy efficiency and cost savings, and also increasing student sustainability competences. But again, it still has great potential to further integrate green spaces into the learning process. Another example, this one is on a policy level, comes from Barcelona, and it's called Escolas Más Sostenibles, so more sustainable schools. And you can see a photo from one of the schools that participate in the program. So this program operates under the Climate Change and Sustainability Office in the Barcelona City Council. The team of this program consists of 6 permanent members and who guide and support several education centers. So what this program does is that it supports member schools with regular training and ongoing guidance on projects, how to transform their learning spaces and to make them more sustainable. So the way it happens is that the school itself leads the process with the guidance of the program. It involves students, parents, staff, principal, and they go through a 3-step process. So they diagnose the needs, they establish an action plan, and then they find solutions. And these solutions can often be either infrastructural, so actually constructing, repairing, building something. They can be organizational, so maybe managing resources differently, or managing energy consumption, so on. Or they can also be behavioral changes, so encouraging at the individual and the whole school community level to change some school behaviors. The program offers teacher training, student exchange events. They give materials and resources, including, for example, to build school gardens. They organize school visits, give information, and also provide specialist advice on how to actually achieve these goals and implement these solutions. So also with this program, there's quite a lot of signs of impact that are maybe difficult to measure specifically, but through the interviews that we collected, we really saw that the participating schools note that student well-being and health has been improved. Their learning outcomes, especially in the subjects of math and natural science, have been improved. Their sustainability competences, the impact on environment because there's more biodiversity now in the school gardens, and impact on the community, which actually gets to participate more and be involved with the school life. So just a few more photos from this example from a school where they renovated the playground, introducing elements for diverse play, planting trees and greenery, creating more shade, and expanding more soft ground in the garden. So as the last part of this presentation, I would just like to share the quote of the principal of the school, who said that the students have become highly communicative, independent, and skilled at problem solving, qualities that stand out significantly. That is the greatest achievement. I believe it's in these areas where we've made the most progress rather than solely in academic results. So yes, these would be the examples of just a few of many hundreds of examples that we found in our research. And we can have a little moment for questions.
Thanks, Eleonora, for that presentation. It's so great to see all these initiatives and also the pictures. It really makes it more visible what is actually the change. So it's great. I just wanted to, before I have a few questions that we gathered from the Q&A, draw your attention also to some of the very nice things that are being shared in the chat. So as Eleonora mentioned in her presentation, we didn't find so many good initial teacher education examples of how to teach on how to actually use this learning spaces integrated with pedagogy, given that it's so important. This is maybe a gap, and Beth, Christy was very kind to, and Daniela as well, were sharing a good example that you can find in the chat, which is the framework for learning for sustainability initial teacher education that has just been launched in Scotland. It does bring attention to the learning spaces, so that's for those who are interested in seeing one good example of that as well. And we also have some good actual academic articles for those who want to explore it more, shared by Alfonso in the chat as well. I see that for the questions, we have quite a few interesting ones, and maybe I can quickly answer the first two ones. So because it's more related maybe to some of the other presentations, but Christina Corbetta was asking if there's a list of sustainable upper secondary schools, and Małgorzata was also asking from Polish side with Ministry of Education if it's possible to get in direct contact with experts who are working in the schools. So here I would say that the compendium will have a lot of different examples of secondary education schools and various institutions that are doing a great amount of work here. So once that is published, we can share that with you, and you can have a look. And then, of course, you can feel free to contact the schools and see if you can do some kind of peer learning together. But for the experts, if you want to have direct contact with us regarding the frameworks that we use for the study, then please do get in touch with us, and we can have a bilateral call on that in the coming weeks, or if that's of interest. But yes, so then for the questions, Eleonora, I think that you could address this. We had an interesting question from the Netherlands. Monica Bronskies was asking or explaining that in the Netherlands, they are in the situation that they have a government that is not very much willing or maybe even opposing to education for sustainable development and the whole school approach. So what best can teachers, school leaders, and their boards do in order to not completely stop this process of educational renewal?
I think a lot of the examples that we have collected are actually of schools themselves kind of taking the initiative and not necessarily following guidance that comes from the government or from the local policy. And hopefully in the next presentation that Bernadeta will present the toolkit, it also kind of discusses on what the school itself can do without necessarily needing to rely on these things. But so maybe I'll leave that for Bernadeta's presentation, but just to reassure that from the examples that we found, it really seems like a lot of schools are not held back by inaction on the government side. But also we're hoping that with the study, we can encourage some more push from up to down as well.
Yeah, I think maybe also just to complement here, I think some schools maybe also have this funding issue that they're being blocked maybe nationally or locally because of this. And here maybe another good example would be to try to come up with some solutions, cost-wise solutions, and offer that to the municipality or to the school boards as well, because sometimes the renovations themselves, they do save costs. It's maybe just, and maybe even in short term in some cases. So I think there are a lot of interesting ideas for how to think a bit outside of the box in our toolkit as well. So yeah, we do also look forward to sharing a bit more about that in the next step. I do see that we had a question that also from Beth that also relates to toolkit, so we could take that later. And then maybe just one question from Paul, and it's about if we observed improvements in sustainability competences and how we observed those.
So this is also discussed, I believe, in the final report and in the case studies, that with something like sustainability competences, it's very difficult to actually determine and measure them, especially since it's not a long-term study. So in some of these schools, these changes that have happened are quite recent. So the schools can't, it's been only a year since they implemented something new, so it's difficult to actually say to actually measure that impact. But through the interviews and just speaking with the educators, with the principals, we've collected quite a few insights of how, from their perspective, they see their students kind of approach to the environment change. Or, for example, I believe in the Vienna case study, one of the teachers was saying that it was quite difficult at first to actually have the children start recycling and engaging with the natural environment. But throughout time, like through constant practice, it started happening. They started noticing that it's becoming kind of easier. It's becoming more visible. So mostly through interviews and kind of impressions from educators is how we determined that there have been improvements in sustainability competences. Also, desk research and just prior research that shows how one or another thing can encourage the development of the competences.
Yeah, I think it depends a bit on the case study. So maybe in the case of the Barcelona initiative, there has already been an evaluation that looked into, not, of course, sustainability competences as complex as we understand, but a few of the elements like around, eco-literacy and just like awareness related. So some of the case studies may have more insights than others. Okay, but then maybe let's continue to the toolkit, and we can see what it has to teach us as well.
Thank you so much, both, for your amazing presentation and showing the good practices and everything. I'm very excited to present you our next deliverable, which is the already mentioned toolkit. And let me start maybe with introducing the toolkit, although we already mentioned that, but just shortly. So it is a practical guidance for all those who are involved in the school infrastructure in primary and secondary schools. And it is a practical guidance on how to make education infrastructure and learning environments more sustainable, but also more supportive of sustainability, competencies, student health, well-being, and learning overall. And as I mentioned, that it is for those involved in school infrastructure. This can include school leadership, local or regional authorities, architects, school staff, teachers, parents, but also students and the wider community. But we also think that it may be useful for NGOs or private sector partners, or those who are involved in curriculum development or other ways of collaborations with the school. And as it has been mentioned already multiple times, environmentally friendly schools and grounds play a crucial role in achieving climate goals and addressing sustainability challenges. And we've seen that in the evidence and in the good practices already mentioned. With this short introduction, we proceed further and give a bit of an overview what are learning environments for sustainability. And we've already heard that today, so I'm not going to go into that. But it is an important part of the toolkit to explain what we mean by that and how we define that. And what is important to say is that it is not just about the physical infrastructure and the spaces, but it is also about teaching and learning for sustainability. And that's why we dedicate a separate chapter to that, where we kind of outline key characteristics of effective learning environments for sustainability. Because we think that these spaces also create opportunities to build knowledge, skills, values, and these learning spaces for sustainability does not happen automatically, but using teaching and learning and different kind of pedagogies that we also mention here in this chapter. This chapter, but also many other chapters, are followed and accompanied by reflective questions to help you assess how these teaching pedagogies are currently being applied, in what ways they are supported, or how can you further enhance their integration into the teaching and learning and into the curriculum. So from this point, we go further into kickstarting the process. And I prepared this little diagram to actually show you the structure and how the toolkit is organized. So this kickstarting the process, it involves, again, multiple reflective questions, and you'll see many questions throughout the toolkit. And we chose this approach because we think that it is up to the school and all those stakeholders who are involved to actually reflect on their journey, because also this toolkit, it is a journey, and learning space for sustainability is a journey. It is not an endpoint. So purpose of these questions is to reflect, and also kind of decide on what is your point of action. And from this kickstarting the process, kind of thinking about a vision, support, financial resources, leadership, but also how to involve youth or community or parents or other stakeholders. You can actually decide whether you want to adapt your existing school or building or classroom, or create a new one. And again, then we go further, and you can actually see more questions, but also you can see specific action points to actually give you a hint on what you can do, and more ideas how to actually go about water efficiency or energy efficiency, and incorporating bioclimatic principles, which water or energy efficiency is part of, but also principles of high quality learning environments, how to actually incorporate sustainability into your governance principles or curriculum. And once you have constructed a new learning environment or adapted your existing learning environment, it's not just about that. It is there, but it is, again, a process and it never ends. So we also include optimizing and prolonging the life of existing buildings and grounds. And we have divided this part into technical aspects, which may include monitoring and evaluation of interventions, but also organizing a training or linking it to the teaching processes. And cultural aspects, which may be more in long term and maybe more difficult to change, such as behavioral kind of habits, but it also includes raising awareness or expanding collaborations with other partners or celebrating achievements. So now, just to give you a little sneak peek of what you can find, we have chosen one chapter, and I'll give you an example of a chapter on adapting existing learning environments. So rather than being prescriptive and definitive, we start with reflective questions again, for you to assess which bioclimatic principles are actually relevant to your school, and what aspects do you want to focus on given your budget or other contextual and bioclimatic factors. But also think about what changes will achieve the greatest impact on students' learning, health, and well-being. And this is not the final list of questions. There are many more, but this is just to give you a little hint what you can find there. So you can think of ways of redesigning or retrofitting a classroom or building, and you can think of various principles that might be relevant for you. And these principles may include principles of adaptability, for example, redesigning classroom to enable the classroom to be adapted for different types of work and teaching methods, such as workshop or group work. When we think about efficiency in materials, which is part of bioclimatic principles, you can use craft classes actually to engage students and to create or fix some materials that the school can actually use. When we think of energy efficiency, you can, again, employ teaching or learning and involve students as part of monitoring and thinking of new solutions. And then one of the examples in the water efficiency principle is raising awareness about water usage, which can be as simple as posting a poster next to water sources, or promoting biodiversity, which can include installing insect and bird feeders or houses or boxes for bats or nesting boxes for common swifts. This is just a little extract, given that we are running out of the time. So I will welcome any questions or comments you might have, and look forward to receive any questions.
Yes, again, we'd like to encourage anyone who would like to maybe make a comment speaking, please use the raise your hand function to do so. If not, I don't see any new questions, but we did have a question from before from Beth Christie saying, I am interested to know if you have any thoughts, insights on how we might ensure and support an intentional integration between the spatial and the pedagogical. Is this addressed in the toolkit? So I think Bernadeta, you did address it in the presentation, and it is addressed in the toolkit, but maybe you want to add anything to this question.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for the question. So we dedicate a separate chapter to teaching and learning and how they can reinforce each other. How can learning environments support teaching and learning for sustainability, but also how teaching and learning can actually create these learning environments for sustainability. So we talk about adaptable and multifunctional classrooms that actually empower various use of wide range of pedagogies. Or we also talk a lot about outdoor teaching and learning. And then not to forget also integrating technology. So these are all parts that hopefully we do address in the toolkit. Yes.
Thank you. And I see we have Joanna who's raising their hand. Let me allow the microphone and camera. Go ahead, Joanna. And don't forget to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you, so if you would just click on the unmute microphone, we should be able to hear. It's not working, but in the meantime, if anyone else has any questions, or Bernadeta, would you like to add anything? Joanna, unfortunately, we cannot hear you. You have been unmuted, and but you still would have to turn on your microphone to speak. All right, I don't think this may not work, unfortunately, but feel free to leave your question in the chat or in the Q&A. And if there are no more questions, then I would like to invite Iselin to close the event and talk a little bit about further steps.
Thank you so much, Eleonora. I just wanted to thank you all for the presentations and also for the comments in the chat, and really encourage you to also, if you want to get in touch or share some of the work that you're doing that may be of relevance to us or to the future development of this field, then please do so in the Padlet. I think it would also be nice for Ulrike to also say a few words if you want, but if you're good.
I'm very good after this presentation, actually. And I mean, I knew everything, so maybe for others it might have been a bit overwhelming because there are so many good examples. So I really encourage everybody, once this is published, to go there and to look at this in detail, and of course to use especially those more practical outputs of the study. So thanks very much for, first of all, your great work on this, and now for the delivery and presentation.
Great, thank you as well. Yeah, so I think Pascal actually had a nice just little short comment in the chat, which was already inspiring. I think it's been very inspiring overall, but just that there are now more than 160 of these course oasis school gardens across Paris, which allows children to be closer to nature and get these experiences, is already very inspiring. And this is also what we hope to just ensure with this material, to motivate more of these type of practices. And then that is going to have some impact in any ways, at least at the minimum level. So we really encourage you to look into the materials. It will be published in May, and we will let you all know. And also, if you come across some of these materials, you think they would be very well to somehow translate them to your national context, and also get in touch with me. We can, our team, we can see about how we can do that, and if it can be possible, because of course we want the information to spread as much as possible. So do that and we will then share, I don't know, Word versions or whatever you need in order to be able to do that. So do let us know. The event recording will also be shared after the event, and the Padlet is as well in the chat, but we will also share it with you over email. So thank you all for joining and all your insights, and we look forward to continue working in this area.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.